But I ask you to consider the human capital, right? The best and brightest, the people that care the most about this country and are willing to sacrifice everything for it, and how they've been misused, more so than our currency. Certainly our currency has been abused. Our taxpayers have been abused. But the most valuable resource we have in this country is the American warfighter, people that don't give a fuck what you look like or what you believe or who you love or any of that shit. But if you're American, get behind me and I'll kill anybody that comes in my fucking direction, right? It's a spirit that you don't see in most other countries. And people think that that is something that exists everywhere, and it doesn't. I'm telling you, if you go visit Europe, go to the Middle East, they don't think that way.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, former Green Beret Christian Perez. Did I say all that right?
You got it. Nailed.
Sweet. I'm doing my best. How you doing?
I'm doing well, but how are you?
Living the dream. Where are you?
I'm actually just outside of Nashville, so about an hour north in good old Clarksville, Tennessee.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Clarksville. Let's go through your history a bit here. So where did you grow up?
Sure. Say again?
Where'd you grow up?
So I actually grew up in Boston, but my story kind of starts a little bit before that. So I'm one of those weirdos who was born in Guatemala. Right, I came out, born in Guatemala, right in the capital, and then around the age of 2, my parents moved here. My dad was he was Puerto Rican, so naturalized citizen, born abroad. Came here, grew up in Boston, spent pretty much the entirety of my life there. Luckily, the military got rid of the Boston accent because it is not particularly appealing. But every now and then it comes out. When I say like coffee, you'll hear it then. But yeah, man, spent most of my life in Boston and thoroughly enjoyed it, joined the Army. And then since then, I've been all over the place from Fort Benning, Georgia, again, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then I ended up in 1st Special Forces Group out of Joint Base Lewis McChord, working with ODA 1236. And now here I am.
So you said your dad is, are both your parents Puerto Rican?
No. So just my dad, and then my mom was actually from Guatemala. How they met, I have absolutely no idea. Bro.
Well, how did your dad end up in fucking Guatemala in the first place?
That's first sight. To this day, I have absolutely no idea. Like that story has never been made clear to me. I know he ended up living there for at least a few years. So he was definitely there for a few years, and then he ended up moving back to Boston. But how he ended up in Guatemala, how he ended up meeting a Guatemalan woman, man, it's perpetually a mystery. Yeah, for sure.
You may want to hit up the Puerto Rican government and see if there's some warrants over there.
For sure. I'll tell you, getting my security clearance, they asked a couple questions. Wait a minute, how did this all line up? For sure.
And your parents, they still together? They live here in the U.S. still?
Yeah, they still live. They're actually still in Boston. So they live there. They're thriving. They're doing well. I met my wife, and so now she and I are down here. We have a kiddo. He's 1 year old, about to be 2. So that was wonderful. But yeah, suffice to say, parents are still good. They're living the dream. Still in Boston.
What was it like growing up there? I
love it, man. I mean, Boston's great for the most part. Naturally, the winters are difficult to maneuver, but you know what? At the very least, it preps you for driving anywhere else where there's snow. Like here in Clarksville, even just an inch of snow and everything is shut down. I mean, it's just car accidents galore, and no matter where you go, there's just it's just havoc and lunacy out here. But in Boston, I mean, if you know anything about that area, blizzards are not particularly new to anyone over there. It's definitely a common thing. So once you learn how to maneuver that type of environment, you can pretty much drive anywhere in snowy conditions. But Boston's great, man. It's beautiful. I mean, it's naturally it's a huge city with a lot of history. The academia thrives there. I mean, everything from Harvard and Cambridge. So I went to Boston University, which is right across the river from the Charles River runs right in between Harvard and Boston University. But yeah, man, I mean, you got a lot of different types of people. It's a melting pot, to say the least, Boston. But it's a great time, and the summers there are beautiful. If you're going to go at any point in time, if any of your viewers have not been to Boston, the summers are the ideal time. Summers and spring are the ideal time. It's beautiful, clear weather, but the winters, just be prepared to drive through some serious snow.
Yeah, it's raining. I think I don't know if it was hyperbole or not, but I read some article that the U.S. is going to get, or the U.S. that Central Texas is going to get a quarter of its rain for the year this weekend.
No, Jesus.
Wouldn't be shocked. It's been dumping pretty much consistently, so we'll
That's
see.
wild.
We'll see how it goes. But yeah, people here can't drive in any kind of weather whatsoever. Like a little bit of rain and they freak the fuck out. It's like, all right, I guess we're doing this.
And I'll tell you, I spent some time in Fort Bliss, and during there was a week there in that Fort Bliss area where it snowed about maybe half an inch. Everybody was losing their minds. It was it was pretty wild to see. But yeah, I mean, I like Texas a lot. I mean, I don't know what part of Texas you guys are from, but I know I've been to the Fort Bliss area there, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, I liked it for sure.
Yeah, we're in Austin, so
Okay, gotcha.
it's not so bad.
Yeah, Austin's great for sure.
So you were, I guess, technically second generation American, although you could also, I guess your whole family could qualify as first generation since you came over here together. But Boston's always been, for the last, let's say, 40, 50 years, been pretty multi-ethnic, I guess, right? Depends on not so much Southie or anything like that. It's mostly white trash down there, but the city itself. What was it like being a Latinx growing up in that area? I guess.
Latinx, yeah. To be frank, the whole concept of politicizing, race and that kind of thing, that was very new to me. It hasn't been particularly pronounced until more recently, where people are significantly more overt, and obviously, they talk about it a lot more, which is it's each their own. But somebody say, I'm sure everybody knows Boston is a very liberal city, extremely liberal, and yeah. So just growing up Hispanic there, the concepts and terminology promoting multiculturalism and this kind of thing, and embracing different cultures and whatnot, that was always a common theme there. I didn't necessarily shy away from it growing up, but I also grew up in a family that, like you mentioned, like my dad having Puerto Rican, like we made it a point to assimilate to American culture very quickly. Like I never even drew a distinction really growing up between American culture and multicultural culture and that kind of sort of like ethnic divides that are so prominent now. But growing up Latino there in Boston, I mean, it didn't really affect me until people really started to promote that concept. I mean, even something like the term Latinx, there's so much nuance wrapped into that term in and of itself. Obviously that was not a term growing up, but I mean, I wish that there was less of it now, and it was more like when I was growing up. Because at least when I was growing up, yeah, everybody identified, in their own way. That wasn't even a thing, like identifying as a certain race or whatever. That wasn't even a thing. It's just you were who you were, and that was it. Nowadays, it's if it's not on your email signature or your profile header, you're probably one of those MAGA Republican dudes.
Yeah, there's when. I guess when we were growing up, we certainly were aware of different people. We just didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like I think the biggest 94 and 95 were two of the biggest years for movies in the history of the country, right? You can look through the list on your own time, but massive blockbuster after blockbuster, actually. And one of the biggest ones was Bad Boys. It was two black cops, and I think the budget was 36 million, and they made like 350 million on the movie. And the series has now made well over $1 billion. Nobody gave a fuck that it was two black dudes. It was like we were entertained because it was a good movie. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The 90s were peak human civilization. I think
100%. 100%.
because people are aware but didn't give a shit.
Yep.
So
Yep.
once once whomever it was, these Marxist dum-dums started trying to shove race and gender and all this stupid shit back into the forefront, then it's like, man, just shut the fuck up. Like it's like it kind of goes back to this old maxim that solved problems don't get out the vote. So politicians that are trying to maneuver things and steal your money and shit like that, really what they want to do is create as much division as possible, because just like it's actually marketing. It's basic marketing. That's why I think a lot of people, I think most people should go take a marketing class at some point and understand the psychology behind it. Because if you start a new business, one of the first things you got to do is differentiate yourself from anybody else in the industry, right? And without that, then you're just some lone dickhead. Like, nobody's going to buy your product. Well, in politics, the product that they sell is, you give me some of your liberty and I'll give you some security. That's the product that politicians sell. Well, I'm not interested in that, right? You can suck both of my balls and my dick. But that's what it is. Yeah, people should start paying more attention to that. I've said this many, many times before, but if somebody's trying to divide you, they're trying to conquer you. That's where the phrase came from.
100%. And that, frankly, that applies in multiple different aspects of life, not only in politics, like you alluded to, not even alluded, but referenced directly. Even just the perpetualization of war. I mean, if you cannot capitalize on international crises, then what good is a war machine? Same thing with healthcare and the healthcare industry and big pharma and pharmaceuticals. If you cannot capitalize on disease and sickness, well, then what good is your company? So it's the capitalization of crises, and it's not going to change until there's a different form of economics. And frankly, which I'm a huge advocate for. Capitalism is a wonderful tool, but you can also leverage it, in a negative fashion when what you're selling hinges entirely on, disease, death, war, conflict, or in this case, liberties.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, man.
It's weird. It's weird that we routinely fall for it. It's not weird that they're trying to do it. Obviously, they're going to try to do it. It's just weird that people are so dumb that they fall for this shit all the time.
I just don't know if it's possible to steer away from it. I mean, it hinges. So they've capitalized on the inevitability of what it is to be human, right? Inevitably, we have differences. Xenophobia is turned, this sort of, it has this negative connotation to be xenophobic, but to a degree, anyone can describe themselves as xenophobic in that you don't leave the front door of your house open for somebody that you don't know to come in. You can call it xenophobia, or you can just call it, security precautions. If I don't know you, then why would I just leave my door open, right? But if you can paint that in a negative light, you can capitalize on that very easily.
Yeah, and it's right now we're in a bit of a situation. We let 20 million unknown people into this country,
right?
And we did so without any review of who they were. I mean, there's hundreds, if not several thousand, terrorists in the country now. We know that for an absolute fact. It's just a matter of how many there are. And it used to be that the price for entry was assimilation, right? Like you come here to be an American. You don't come here to fucking stand up little Somalia and somewhere in Minnesota. That's stupid. Somalia sucks. That's why you left, right? Like, nobody's telling you to get rid of your religion. Nobody's telling you to dress any certain way or eat food you don't want to eat. But this is America. The end. Hard fucking stop, right? The reason you came here is because we're better. And you bringing your bullshit here doesn't make us better. It makes us worse. So, that used to be the case. Now it's like, that's offensive to people. I just don't understand the logic there, where you came from a place that fucking sucks and you want to bring that with you. Why? Like, that's what you were trying to escape, is it not? Or are you just trying, like, the other alternative is that you're a pestilence and you're trying to bring your pestilence here. You're a virus and you got to get the fuck out, right? Those are the only two options there.
100%. And that's the thing. There's this idea that they're mutually exclusive, right? That you cannot culturally assimilate to the United States and still sort of embrace a modicum of your own culture where you came from. That's not entirely true. And what I mean by that is, like, Yes, 100%. It is your responsibility to culturally assimilate as soon as you get here. Why? For the very reason that you laid out, right? You're leaving your country because for whatever reason you found that whatever principles, morals, system is less than ideal, it's subpar, and you want something better. Sure, you can talk about your history. We can address that. That's awesome. That does not need to be necessarily a celebration. You can embrace all that all you want, but don't make it, don't make it your sole purpose to come here and then bring all of that with you, and vote with that mentality. Establish policies under the guise of multiculturalism that really just perpetuate the same exact policies that you left from. And there, I think, lies the underlying problem with this normalization of like multiculturalism in policy. You're leaving a country for a particular reason because, frankly, for whatever reason, it's less than ideal. And then you want to bring that here. And, that's one of the things. So, like, growing up in Boston, kind of going back to what we were discussing, growing up in Boston, you're absolutely right. Like, South Boston is definitely like a, very, white area. Same thing with the majority of Boston in and of itself is it's mixed. I mean, you get so many travelers from all over the place. But if you look at the outskirts of Boston, places like Chelsea, Revere, which, are just smaller cities, but immediately like a 5-minute drive, they're predominantly Hispanic, Black communities. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I had a hard time with, that I was personally not okay with, and luckily my parents also felt the same way. We did see a lot of like illegal immigration into those areas, and they would try to, say things along the lines of like, oh yeah, well, we're bringing, whatever fill in the blank country to the U.S. Hold on a second, time out. No, like, why? I've made this point to multiple people, and sometimes it kind of clashes with them, but it's a frank reality. There are some cultures that suck. Simply put, they really are.
It's hard. It's a hard pill for people to swallow because,
yeah.
One, they haven't experienced it. Like I highly encourage you to go to the Middle East and hang out in a couple of different places, right? Because I think the Middle East is the best place to see this. Asia to some degree as well. But I think the Middle East is the best place to see it because you can go from the hinterland areas in Saudi Arabia into the city, and it's widely different, right? Like it's markedly different. You go from madrasas to Riyadh, which is trying desperately to modernize so they don't get fucking ejected from society, right?
Yeah.
But then you can go to Bahrain, Jordan, Oman, UAE, and stuff like that, and you see modern civilization happening. And you go to Iran. You can go to Afghanistan, you can go to Iraq, and you can see shitholes. Those are shitholes. All of them are terrible places. Lebanon is a shithole. Yes. And it's because they've chosen their path. They've chosen to make their culture about exclusionary politics, whether it's religion or something else, right?
Right.
And that is, it's just authoritarian nonsense. And you can see, like, we are in a global war with Islam. I think people need to fucking recognize that. And in the same way that we've been at war with other stupid ideologies over time. And, there's two parts of this. One is that people who are Islamic that are not part of this stupid globalist jihad bullshit need to fucking defeat the people who are. Otherwise, all of Islam is going to get defeated eventually. That's how it'll work, right? And the other part is the West needs to recognize what the fuck's happening here. That these folks are perfectly willing to wait it out for 100 years, move into your country, outbreed you, and change the culture, and that is unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
See Europe, for example. That's precisely what they're doing in Europe right now.
That's completely unacceptable, and there's nothing xenophobic or racist or any of that shit about wanting to protect your own culture. We built the best country in the world here, and it's been constantly eroded by assholes, and we're allowing it to happen. It's fucking nonsense.
Yeah, and that sort of speaks to the second, third, and fourth order effects of building an excellent country, right? It's you inevitably create this bubble, and now you have these pseudo intellectuals trying to become the moral arbiters of what is okay and what is not, without actually having ever stepped foot in countries wherein they would get absolutely just destroyed simply because they were different. Like you talked about Asia, and the countries in Asia, they're very culturally homogenous. And there's a reason why that is because they embrace their culture wholeheartedly, and they are very reluctant to let virtually anyone in. There was a news article. I don't remember from what news magazine, but they were talking about specifically how I believe if I recall correctly, it was Japan who's like, oh man, it's clean streets, it's beautiful. But what they don't tell you is the criminal penalties if they
Mm.
catch you throwing trash on the street. You know, they also don't tell you the number of visas that they approved. Very, very few. I mean, the percentage is just so much lower in those countries than it would be otherwise, like in the United States. So these very countries that people kind of like elevate and put on a pedestal as, oh, these are the prime examples of we should aspire to be. Well, they don't dig. It's not even about digging deeper. It's just they're highlighting the things that they want to highlight without actually pointing out the fact that like the reason why they're like that is cultural homogenism is very strict enforcement of criminal penalties.
Mm.
So how do you square that circle, right?
Yeah, consequences matter, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
From you're a parent now. You know that uh, you were a soldier as well. You know that from that,
Yeah,
just training young guys. But consequences matter probably more than anything else.
100%.
And we are absent that. Now let's go back to you. What made you decide to join the military?
Man, I'm convinced that it's kind of ingrained in most men's DNA to want to sort of like fight for a thing, right? So that's not to make it all existential and whatnot, but like growing up, like the ads struck me. Everything about the culture struck me. The military culture in and of itself was obviously like the light that was shot on it was very much painted in the perspective of like discipline and order and regiment, and I really liked that. For whatever reason, that appealed to me. I mean, I remember as early as sometime in around middle school or something, I expressed wanting to go to West Point. Now, I didn't end up going to West Point because, frankly, I was a first generation student. I had no idea how to get to West Point, and like it's the kind of thing like if you don't know how to get to West Point in middle school, you're probably not gonna get there. Like, which is wild to say, but like you pretty much have to kind of set now I know you have to set yourself up for success that early on if that's what you want to do. Suffice to say, the culture really appealed to me, and I ended up doing it, man. Like I will say, it was completely in opposition to my mom wanting me to do so. Naturally, like any mother would. She was apprehensive, and of course, she also didn't really understand like how U.S. military culture works. Um, but every I feel like every guy has their sort of the dragon they have to slay,
Mm.
the seemingly unconquerable that they have to conquer, which frankly is why I think you see so much wokeism in a bubbled culture like we see here in the US, is because, well, when you don't have an immediate enemy, you just have to create one,
Mm.
and so that's why a lot of guys, and sadly in today's day and age, not a lot of guys, but like more than there used to be, are creating this figment of a monster. But going back to me, it was that, man. It was I liked the culture. I wanted to be that. When I saw ads for the military, I was like, that's what I want to be. Courage, commitment, all that warrior ethos stuff that they
Mm.
kind of throw at you. That once you're in the military, it sounds kind of cheesy. But when you're growing up, I mean, you're like, yes, that looks freaking legit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, um, I don't know what the current data is, but as of the latest that I read, I think it was in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
25% of active duty U.S. service members had a parent who also had served.
Hmm.
So it seems to be like there's some cultural draw to it, right?
Yeah.
Once, like if you're raised in a way that, I guess, part of your identity is service, or part of your identity is like the value, strength, honor, sacrifice, the shit that you think of,
Mm-hmm.
from military service. Um, I think that's a that's probably the most obvious way to amplify those things, right? Like otherwise, and I tell people like during certain times, like I probably wouldn't join the military right now, to be honest. I said that 4 years ago when Biden was president, because look at what they did to these people.
Right.
But you can still find other ways to do it. You can go be a police officer or something like that. I mean, I would recommend sheriff's departments. City cop is not a great job to have, in my opinion, just because of the politics surrounding it. But sheriffs have quite a bit more. They have a lot more ability to tell people to go fuck themselves when something's wrong.
Like in regards to what you're saying, Gerard Michaels, he asked me probably one of the most challenging questions that anyone's asked me in a long time. He asked me, he was like, if your son were to want to join the military right now, would you let him? I really have to stop and think. Not now necessarily with like the Trump administration, but just with how the military had evolved from Biden into the now that it is. And that was a really challenging question, man, because like, with everything that I got out of the military and what I learned and the values and principles that it, helped cement in my life, I'm inclined to say absolutely. But with that, I also, I mean, Jesus Christ. So you just see the the immediate after effects of the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. You see things like that. You see just the shift in military culture and how it was almost how there was this real attempt at turning it into one more leftist tool to leverage against everybody, by just like indoctrinating soldiers from the bottom up, and really from the top down, actually, in the military, from the top down, with these like woke ideologies and trying to perpetuate all that, and just seeing the politicization that occurs, especially once you get to the flag officer level. I mean, it really made me stop and think, like, would I be okay? Would I, with not necessarily okay, but like, would I encourage my son to join the military now? It was a tough one, man, for sure.
Yeah, same. If I had a son, I would tell him no right now, to be honest, until this country demonstrates that they can be trusted with his sacrifice. Like, and it's the same thing. Like, if I would say the same about taxes, and I don't give a shit who the current president is or isn't.
Right.
Like, I don't want my tax money being used to bomb poor people, frankly, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want it being used to fund transgender research in foreign countries. Like, fuck off, man. This stuff has to matter, right? Like, this is the... I don't believe in social contracts, because there is no social contract, because you're just born where you're born. You don't get to sign... Like, I didn't review some document and sign it. I'm subject to the laws of the place that I was born in, regardless of how they feel about natural laws. So that's just how it is. But if there is any kind of implied social contract, it's that my work belongs to me. My labor belongs to me because it's part of my person. And that includes whatever sacrifice I choose to make or not make, right? And that makes it it makes it my prerogative, and then the onus is then on the government, on whatever institution, to make it a worthwhile venture, right? This is why I used to like. I don't know that we should even have a standing army. I think we should have. Certainly trained militias and stuff like that. Like every adult male should be trained how to fight, in my opinion.
100%.
And then if we need to go to war, convince me. Convince me we need to go to war. Give me a good fucking reason, and I'll sign up right now. I don't give a shit. Like I'm begging for a good war to fight. I think a lot of us have been for a very long time. We fought in some stupid ass wars, and certainly we did some good, did some not so good. But it reminds me of I think it was Michael Fassbender's character in the first 300 movie. He was like, "This is like the dream for the Spartan is to have." A noble death in combat. Like, that's the best way you could possibly die. Not that we want to die or anything like that, but I think every young man that's so inclined, and there's memes about it, like the male urge to hold off enemy fire while everybody retreats or escapes or something like that. It's like kind of baked into our DNA to some degree. And all we want is a noble and honorable way to serve, I feel like, and it's being ripped away from us.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And, it was actually the first time that I ever heard this idea was from a book that I really enjoyed, man. It was Mike Waltz wrote it. It's called Warrior Diplomat, and he made the case for whether there should be, we're referencing a standing army or not. And he made the case for why the draft is a particularly good tool. Sometimes, for one, it encourages wars to be done quickly. When you make it evident that what you need to do is go to war, then you go to war for the right reasons, right? Not only that, but there is less risk aversion at the officer level, at the operational strategic level. There's less risk aversion than there is now, because the fact of the matter is, what your OER and your NCOER is not going to look good if you're losing half your guys. With that being said, you're also incentivizing people to finish wars quickly. You go to war for the right reasons and you finish wars quickly, because no one who's ever gone to war will. It's same thing with UFC fighters. It's why they're so apprehensive to get into direct physical altercations with people, because they know the reality of what can happen. Right. So when you make that make that very clear to society, and pretty much war becomes a last ditch effort where everyone's involved and the reason is obvious, I mean, it certainly disincentivizes the career militarism that we have now. Yeah, it was a particularly unique point, man. But on top of that, it also kind of sheds light on how normal things can become very quickly. Because you were referencing taxes too. I mean, the same thing with like the way that the military is structured and how you can have a career in the military, etc. Well, even with taxes, everyone is taken aback when all of a sudden the Trump administration comes in and goes, "Hey, you know what? We're going to see if we can get rid of income tax for a certain subset of people." And people are taken aback with this idea. They're like, "Wait, you can do that?" Yeah, I mean, income tax wasn't a thing for a good, I believe it was a good majority of U.S. history, you know. But again, it's just people become so normal, they become so just callous to it that they're just like, oh, I guess this is the status quo. This is what's normal. I just give all my money to the government and they do what they will with it. And then Doge comes in and they start shedding light as to where that money's actually going, and all of a sudden people are a little bit taken aback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny to me, and I've tried to make this point a couple times to people that are, I guess, war hawks, or more frequently it's chicken hawks, and that's a war hawk that didn't have the balls to serve themselves. It's like when you go to that voting booth, like right now it's becoming very obvious because it hits people in their wallet, right? They see these billions of dollars being spent on stupid bullshit, and then they see inflation and their inability to put food on their tables sometimes, and they're like, what the fuck, right? It's very obvious that they're being fucked over by somebody. But I ask you to consider the human capital, right? The best and brightest, the people that care the most about this country and are willing to sacrifice everything for it, and how they've been misused, more so than our currency. Certainly our currency has been abused. Our taxpayers have been abused. But the most valuable resource we have in this country is the American warfighter, people that don't give a fuck what you look like or what you believe or who you love or any of that shit. But if you're American, get behind me and I'll kill anybody that comes in my fucking direction, right? It's a spirit that you don't see in most other countries. And people think that that is something that exists everywhere, and it doesn't. I'm telling you, if you go visit Europe, go to the Middle East, they don't think that way. It's not part of their fucking cultural DNA to think that way. America is unique in that regard. And the fact that we've so abused that natural resource that we have here that other people don't is a fucking stupid tragedy, to be honest. Like, it's completely avoidable, and we did it anyways. And it doesn't just to make money, by the way. That's all it ever was. It's just a way to fucking extract labor and wealth from the population. That's literally all it is.
100%. And it's simply put, it's the Trump administration's push for peace through strength. I don't know why people are so particularly taken aback by that, but it's again, it's the bubbled moral arbiters. It's what it is. They're taken aback by this very obvious concept. You're not going to confront someone who can leverage their weapons, their money, their everything against you. You're just not going to. So these are very simple, very just innate to human nature concepts. But somehow, when applied at a level of international relations, all of a sudden, we're all classic Americans, leveraging the Department of Defense's Leviathan force against every country. Well, there's a reason why. There's a reason why. And again, just going back to what we were already referencing, if you go to different countries, you'll very quickly see how not everyone has this pacifist, well, let everybody live their lives sort of idea and ideology that a lot of people here in the U.S. have. Contrary to popular belief, there are people in foreign countries who they would not hesitate to kill every American if they could. They would not. They would not. But that is a reality that a lot of people refuse to confront, or they just simply believe that it's not the case. It's easy to just assume that everybody thinks the way that one does, right? But that's a very that's just a very sort of like standard way of thinking. Where, like, my kid thinks that the world revolves around him, and therefore everything must be, according to his eyes. But that's not the reality of life.
Yeah.
It's not. It really is not. It's a very, frankly a very childish opinion, very naive to say the least.
Yeah, I think, we go through these transitory periods in our own lives, right? Like, you're a child and you think one way, you're a young adult and you think another way, and then you're an adult and you think a way, and then you're an experienced adult, and then you find wisdom, hopefully, at some point. And that's just kind of part of the natural process. But, an unwatered tree is going to grow, right? It's going to grow still. It just may not grow well. And it may grow in the wrong direction if it's not kept well, and so on and so forth. And we've done a very poor job of instilling what I think is the most important trait in young people, which is integrity, right? Because I think everything flows from integrity. I think your sense of honor flows from integrity. I think certainly your sense of honesty, the like justice, and how you use the things that you have access to, whether it be your own gifts, skills you've developed, or power or wealth or whatever it is. It all flows from integrity. And, I think the linchpin of integrity is realizing that principles matter more than tribalism. You know what I mean? Like, tribalism is the bait. It's like, and frankly, not a bad thing completely, because we are pattern-seeking creatures. So people that, in the early days of humanity, somebody that looked more like us was probably not a threat, and somebody that didn't might be a threat, right? But that's a transitory thing. That was in the infancy of human beings. Now we're hopefully going to get to some wisdom at some point. And what we've done is we've taken that same concept and transformed it. This is what America really is. We transformed it from, an ethnic or nationality or nationalist thing to an idealistic thing, which is, if you support the ideas that make America what it is, then you're part of my family. I don't give a fuck. Like, we're going to argue, we might fight a little bit, but if somebody else shows up trying to talk some shit, they're getting fucked up, right? That was kind of the standard for a long time, and part of that is integrity. And part of, again, the linchpin of integrity is that we all share some common goal at some point, whatever it happens to be, and we all fall back on that. Like, it's like a mission statement for a company, and every single thing we do in our lives has to fulfill that mission statement, right? So that's what, to me, integrity is. Do I have a North Star that I can compare my actions to and make sure that I'm on the right path? And the right path to us in America is to maximize liberty in whatever way we can, right? And, we don't do a very good job, I think, of teaching our young people that kind of integrity, where it's not your personal experience that matters the most. It's not about you. Life is not about you. And this doesn't mean that you shouldn't take care of yourself. What it means is that every philosophy, every religion, and throughout all of human history has recognized this. Every meaningful thing you do in your life will be in the service of other people. And once you get that through your thick fucking head, you can stop looking in the mirror like narcissists and start doing shit that actually matters. This is something that has to get back to being a core part of not just our education system, but the way we even think, right? Like integrity is a core competency, and without it, nothing else matters.
100%. Absolutely. Not to nerd out about Game of Thrones, but one thing in particular that I liked about there is they have these two quotes that I don't remember what character in particular talks about it, but he says, all men must serve and all men must die. And it just resonates, man, because it's the reality of a society, especially a society like like the social experiment that America is, And to be frank, you look at the timeline of the U.S. and we're about to turn 250 years old. That is not a very long time in the grand scheme of humanity, right? So when you look at it under that light and you really put it into perspective, this is relatively novel. With that being the case, it also becomes that much more fragile, And I agree with you. I agree with you in that what the identity that most, what I consider true Americans have really embraced is one wherein we believe in the principles that a democratic republic based on the Constitution uh, espouses. Those principles are what connect me and you. It's how you and I find common ground, and therefore how we become a tribe. Sure, we're bound naturally by a border, and we can point on a map and say that is my country. Yeah, absolutely, there are physical borders, but those mean absolutely nothing when your ideology is on the line. It's why there's such a political rift right now between the left and the right, because we can live in the very same country. We can share the same currency, and we can literally share the same zip code in many cases. But if our ideologies don't align to such a fundamental level, wherein one person might think that boys are boys and girls are girls, and another will think that boys can become girls and girls can become boys, you're doomed for division no matter what, because your differences are set at a primal, fundamental level. You know. So yeah, I cannot agree more in that the tribalism is good, wherein if and only if your ideologies and principles and your moral standards align.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, it's like a social and philosophical rally point, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how we get different as time goes on, we all know that this is the place where we can meet back again and share our differences with each other.
Right.
But if there isn't that place of sameness, then we're not a people anymore. Right?
No.
We're just a bunch of assholes that are fighting inside
Yeah.
of these imaginary walls that make up the borders of our country. We're not a country anymore if we do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The founders knew this, and I think all civilizations throughout all of human history knew it, and through weakness, they kind of all eroded. The one that people, I guess, kind of like to compare us to is Rome, but I don't think people actually understand much about the Roman Empire. They understand the first century of Rome, and then maybe they have some idea of what the second, third, fourth centuries were like. But the fourth century is really where it gets started, when, the relatively easy times have made completely weak and retarded men.
Yes.
The leadership was insane, like literally insane. Caligula, Tiberius, Nero, people like that. But the really insane thing that they did as a culture wasn't just to, allow nut job emperors to be in charge, but to allow their Western empire to be overtaken by Goths and Visigoths and Germanic tribes like that, and then expected it was all just going to work out. And the reason that it happened wasn't that it wasn't even that the leadership wanted it. It's that they needed it because Roman people refused to do those menial jobs anymore. They refused to do the work that's required of people to sustain a country, and they depended on immigration to do it, frankly. That's what happened. And the Western Empire became the Byzantine Empire, who considered themselves Roman, although not any of them were Roman. And it was a completely different culture than what we would have expected from second and third century Rome. And it's happening here now, and I can't. It's insane to me to hear these leftists talk like this, that nobody's going to be able to build houses or pick our fruit anymore if we don't let illegal immigrants in. Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, and it's certainly problematic to hear leadership people talking that way, but way worse are the ordinary people who accept that as a premise, because if we stop putting people into the jobs that matter for infrastructure, then we will not survive as a country. That's just how it is.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's just sort of like a direct correlation between affluence and a demand for higher earning wages, which is perfectly normal, you know. But it also comes down to going outside and touching the grass sometimes, and really, actually like feeling the pulse of what it is that to have a functioning society. And this is why the pendulum is swinging, and I think will continue to swing in the other direction, wherein what was once how our culture in particular promoted college educated people with master's degrees and PhDs, so on and so forth. All of a sudden, you're going to start seeing a greater swing towards trades, and perhaps even, government subsidies for educating people in trades. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to fix your house. Like you cannot live in a beautiful house without someone who can maintain it. And so there's this rift that exists in a society that continues towards affluence and wealth, that they no longer want to do the things to help maintain what they already have. And that's, I think that's how you overspend. I mean, it's basic budget management, right? When you buy more than you can actually afford. And what I mean by afford, I don't mean like on a monetary level, but I mean like on a maintenance level. Like if you buy more as a culture, not as a culture, correction, as a society, you buy more as a society than you can otherwise maintain. Well, now you have to somehow maintain that, and you have to figure out whether that's going to be through teaching people how to do the job, teaching people that are in your country already to do the job, importing people from other countries, or what you're also seeing a swing towards automation. But with automation also comes this hesitancy because, okay, well, where's my job now? How am I going to make my money? Well, you got to pick one, man. We can't, it's got to be maintained in one way or another. Yeah. And so you're going to see one of those three things. I think we'll for sure see a swing towards incentivizing people to get into trades more so than people who can regurgitate textbooks, because anybody can do that, and especially with the advent of AI. I mean, you have a library, a wealth of human knowledge in the palm of your hand. So you're going to see more people going towards trades. I think what we're going to see, especially in the U.S., is increased automation for a fact, because people are still going to want their food, but they're not going to want to work for it. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, and I don't think we're doing people any favors. As a matter of fact, I know we're not doing them any favors by taking responsibilities away from them.
Absolutely.
As a soldier, you learn this pretty quickly, but I think I think even more so as a parent when you're dealing with younger kids, because
yes.
The best way to reward somebody who has accomplished something is to give them more responsibility, in my opinion. And I don't you may not see that as a hard asset, and it's not more money. It's not more of this, right? And certainly people should be compensated commensurate with their work product. But
Sure.
The best thing you can do for a young person is to give them more responsibility, because they've shown that they're capable. And now you're going to test the limits of that capability and make them better, right?
Right.
Making somebody better is quite a bit more effective than making them feel good, than praise or money or any of that shit. Because, once... I think there's a tipping point where your competence reaches a certain level that your confidence matches it, and then you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? You don't need any more hand holding or any of that stuff. You don't need to be spoon fed anymore. You can go out and create on your own, and that is kind of the American dream, is it not?
Right. Absolutely. It absolutely is. But it goes back to, people need to understand, again, the reality of the world that we live in. None of these things, I don't. They all go hand in hand, and I think it's where we're missing the point as a society as a whole. I try to tell a lot of these. So once a week, I make it a point to go and help out at a local high school, specifically the seniors that are about to go into college or the military or whatever they want to do, and just kind of feeling the pulse for multiple reasons. For one, like I said, I'm a father now, and so those seniors now are who my son is going to be potentially voting for as their leadership. So I want to see kind of where they're at, and if in any way, shape, or form I can influence that, I will. Additionally, I also it helps me get a pulse of what's going on in society at that level, right? Because there is a sort of a difference, inevitably within different generations. That's inevitable, and it is to this day it's mind blowing to me how so many people in the younger generation, aspire to be quote unquote influencers. And at the end of the day, that's great. I think there's a time and place for that. But if you don't have a pulse on the reality of life and you don't know what it is to actually be a human in a human society, what like influencing in and of itself does not produce anything. It doesn't. But it does help promote ideas, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. It helps promote ideas. It helps promote principles. It helps spread a message that is potentially beneficial in many ways. That's phenomenal, and I think that that's absolutely necessary. But the people that you want doing that are seasoned individuals who understand the pulse of the world around. The fact of the matter is, like, I intend on taking my son hunting. I intend on showing him where his food comes from, where society comes from as a whole, like where things, it doesn't just show up in your fridge,
Mm.
and when you don't know that, when you're not aware of that, you're building your own Truman Show around yourself,
Yeah.
it's really what you do.
Yeah. It's, man, just the idea of like an a la carte life where
Yeah.
everything is kind of like just at your fingertips all the time. It
Right.
does. We've seen the results of this for years. It's not new. I mean, certainly we've gotten more comfortable now and it's a bit more pervasive. But I think everybody in their mind right now can think of an example of somebody who grew up without any struggle, a trust fund kid, and how shitty they all turn out. You've never met a good one, not once.
Yeah.
So like, it's shocking to me that we think that that's going to work. And you've written a book that kind of
Yeah.
talks about a lot of this stuff about, the pursuit of excellence, that there's going to be one phrase that I like to use is between you and what you want is some fucking pain, and you're either going to be ready for it or not, right? And
Absolutely.
you're going to quit or you're not, and that's how it
Yes.
is. So you got to make that choice yourself. Everybody does, but you know, part of being able to make that choice is being, I guess, trained and educated at a young age that's even possible, right?
Yes.
Like I remember, I think running is a good example of it. Rucking too to some degree, but running especially because I would run a little bit in high school because I was a baseball pitcher. So we would jog, to
Sure.
shake the lactic acid loose, but I didn't really run until I was in the 82nd. And then it was
Right.
like, fuck,
Yeah.
we're running
Yeah.
every goddamn day now. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
But we would run 3, 4, 5 miles
Mhm.
on a regular basis, a couple times a week, and I realized pretty quickly that if you can run 2, you can run 3, and if you can run 3, you can run 5. If you can run 5, you
Yeah.
can run 10. It's just a matter of like taking care of yourself and focusing on what you're doing. Because yeah, it's gonna suck. Obviously, it sucks. But you can do it. And I think a lot of people go through life never challenging themselves. So they never really know what their potential is. And there's a lot of that in this book. Tell me about the book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, so the book is called Beyond the Assessment, and I'll tell you the real catalyst that really made me sit down and actually like dedicate my time and effort to writing this book was having my son. Um, it's also, frankly, why I encourage a lot. I encourage young men to responsibly uh, get married and have children because it's like a switch, man. Your perspective on life almost immediately changes, where your decisions no longer affect just you. Society around you no longer affects just you. And when all of a sudden, you care about someone else to such a degree that you'd be willing to give your life for them in a moment's notice without hesitation, the decisions that people make around you matter infinitely more. And so I wanted to write this book primarily because I wanted to sort of make tangible a series of principles that I felt every young man should have. And if not every young man, at the very least, my son. You know, the fact of the matter is, and I stress this as many times as I possibly can to as many people as I possibly can. the thing that is of most value to you that everyone has and no one can really affect unless they kill you is your time,
Mm.
right? And so, with that being the case, I wanted to take the time to do this for my son because I don't know how much time I have, but if I can make tangible a series of principles that I think he can live by, whether I'm there or not, whether and inevitably at some point I will not be present, you know, then at the very least he has a compass. He has a place to recalibrate, and say, okay, time out. What am I doing wrong? And none of the things that I talk about. I want to make this very clear. None of the things that I talk about are these like groundbreaking truths. Like I'm not writing this book telling people like I'm going to give you the key to parenthood and leadership, so on and so forth. No, but we constantly need reminders of what it is to live a good, fulfilling, productive life of benefit not only to you but a benefit to those around you. It's just for whatever reason it's what we need. We just need a constant reminder, and I think it just has a lot to do with just the human tendency to uh, to veer towards a status quo, largely defined by just metabolic efficiency. And what I mean by that is I can just sit here and do absolutely nothing and be perfectly fine for a period of time. But if I want to grow, if I want to be better, if I want to improve, I actually have to exert energy. And in many ways, a lot of people in today's day and age refuse to do so. And this book, it's just a daily reminder. I made it short. I made the chapters short, and I made the book short. Why? Because it doesn't. I'm not asking people to dedicate hours of their life to reading this book. No, I would much rather you read one chapter, and if that one chapter motivates you to get up and do something, boom, mission accomplished. Like what I set out to do is fulfilled.
Mm.
You know. But in many ways, it's just what people need. They just need this just push. Just like get up and go. That's it. Like Nike nails it. Like when they just do it, it's that simple, man. Like if I had to summarize it, just do the thing. Just get up and do the thing. And I make it a point. It's even from the first chapter. The first chapter I talk about the integrity to the self and the quintessential example of what integrity to self is, and that's your physical fitness. No one can control that. No one. I cannot force you to do a thing. It has to come from within you, and it strictly benefits you. So, influencing those around you, you cannot positively benefit the world around you if you don't start by engaging in positive influence around it for yourself. And it goes back to what we're referencing here is build a solid foundation within you. Then build a solid foundation with those around you, your immediate family. Then spread that into society, and as you grow, as you cement that stability in your own life, that integrity in your own life, then you can start to emit that into society as a whole. And you don't even have to say much at that point. People are just generally drawn to you because you just espouse this being that is contradictory to what is the norm in today's society. When you embody that, when you can embody true integrity, discipline, and all those principles that we aspire to embody, people are innately drawn to that because what you are is order amidst disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so that's what I did with this book, man. And that was really the hope for Beyond the Assessment, is just encouraging people to establish order within themselves and then slowly create order around them.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the guiding or the foundational principle of our system of government here is federalism. That is to say, decentralized power, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it begins
Absolutely.
with you, just like everything else. I mean, the way that I say this is that you can only really control two things in your life, and that's your attitude and your effort. Nobody can stop you in those two things. No, people can certainly try to stop you, but your attitude and your effort belong solely to you. And
Yes.
when it comes to energy, this is a universal law of physics that energy exists, and it is converted from potential into kinetic, and that's how it works, right?
Right.
The amount of energy will always be the same, and that you have access to it, and it is your will, your force of will, that converts it from potential energy into kinetic energy. And
Absolutely.
again, only you can do that. Nobody can take it from
100%.
you. So, get off your fucking ass, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what
You
to
know,
tell you.
absolutely. And just, with the with the physics principles in mind, well, another particular principle that stands out to me is the concept of entropy. Is ordered systems move towards a state of disorder unless you infuse them with energy.
Mm,
So we're inevitably set on a trajectory towards disorder unless you do the thing, unless you infuse it with the energy necessary to maintain that order.
yeah.
You know,
I mean,
um,
it's a pointless, unmotivated, purposeless life is like an unwatered plant. Why the fuck would you want that to be your life? Like if you look at a
yeah,
plant that's been taken care of and a plant that hasn't, why would you do that to yourself?
right. Yeah. And in many ways, I will say, I think one of the hard things, and I've had a lot of, not a lot of people, but I've definitely had quite a few people, so a surprising number at least, reach out and tell me, hey, one of the things that I struggle with is finding purpose. And that has become this just pervasive issue in society is finding purpose. And, not to kind of, spread even more negativity in that regard. But the more artificial intelligence accelerates, the harder it's going to be for people to find purpose. And what I mean by that is, right now, in many ways, people find purpose in what they do on the day to day. And if you start slowly taking away what people can do and replacing it with machinery that is able to do it infinitely better and infinitely more efficient, then where are you going to find your purpose? And that's why it becomes so important to find purpose, not in necessarily the things that you do for a job per se, but rather the things that you do to create order within yourself and those around you, and the things that I was already kind of referencing earlier. um, I'll tell you, and it's why one of the things that I really wanted to affect in this book too is not just my son's life, but also veterans as they transition from the military into the civilian world.
Mm,
I mean, I was one of those veterans that I struggled at first, because it's that's what I did for a good. I gave my 20s to the military. Particularly formative time in my life, I gave to the military, and then I turned 30, and I decided, hey, you know what, I want to pursue other endeavors. But when I got out, it's quite the shock that you experience. Primarily because in many ways, if your identity is tied strictly to that, then all of a sudden your purpose, comes into question as well. Um, and that was one of the things that I really, I made it a point to try to motivate people with this book is to find purpose where it really matters, where it truly exists. Not in these fleeting things that once if you lose it, that's it. What do you do? Um, so I mean, yeah, I really hope that that's the message that it carries. That's really the intent with which I wrote it is find purpose, create order.
mm. That's how it works, to be honest. I mean, if you're, it's kind of a platitude, I guess, but the old saying goes, if you're heading nowhere, that's where you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, man.
get your shit
Yeah,
together.
it's been great in that regard. Like, I really hope that this book inspires people. I've also recently started a company here in Tennessee. It's a for-profit benefit corporation.
Mm,
It's called Altabum Incorporated. And what I seek to do is teach veterans how to use generative AI in their day to day. Biggest reason why is primarily, I mean, people that are out in the civilian sector right now. I mean, they're using these tools on a daily basis. There's a myriad of companies out there that are leveraging these tools, and they're using it to make their companies infinitely more efficient, more productive. The military, as many people know, is a slowly evolving behemoth of an organization. And while in some aspects they're great to respond and train soldiers quickly to react to the ever-changing environment on the domain of warfare, when it comes to leveraging a lot of the tools that are often used in the civilian sector because of perfectly viable reasons like security and that kind of thing, it can be very slow to transition. And so that's one of the things that I'm encouraging people to really get into is the advent of AI and really digging deep into like what that's going to look like, because it's a technology that's here to stay, you know. And I've been informing myself more and more about it, and it's why I started this company in particular, because I really believe that there is going to be a need, if not right now, which frankly I would argue right now, but if not in the immediate now, people will absolutely start feeling the effects of AI in the next 2 to 3 years. And what I mean by that is the effects that it has on your day to day beyond ChatGPT on your phone and asking it to create cool pics. I mean, like, it's a revolution, just like the printing press was, just like fire was, just like the steam engine was. It's precisely that. If you don't embrace the tech as it's coming out, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, that's just how it is. Creative destruction happens. And you can either get on your board and ride the wave, or you can drown. So
Yeah,
make your choice.
That's
Look,
it.
we got to get out of here. I appreciate your time today. Tell everybody where they can find you and find the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so the book is called, like I said, it's called Beyond the Assessment. If you go on my website, it's www.beyondtheassessment.com. You'll find it there. There'll be a link there for the book on Amazon. You can also buy the Elite Edition or the Premium Edition. Those are coming directly from me. And for any veteran out there that's interested in getting into the field of artificial intelligence and just kind of learning, or not, it doesn't even have to be just veterans, but just kind of learning how to use generative AI, my company website is www.altivum, that's altivum.io. So you can check it out there. My Instagram is Chris Gray 0321. And yeah, so give me a follow there. Same thing on X. Pretty much on every social media platform as Chris Gray 0321. So really appreciate your time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime. Everybody go check it out. Check out beyondtheassessment.com. And thanks again for coming today. Thank you all for listening. This has been Sift.